Why was everyone laughing at her before she even took the first shot? Maybe because they didn't know who she really was. Or maybe because she wanted it that way. The desert heat shimmered across Fort Renaer's firing range, a mirage of sweat, sand, and pride. Rifles cracked in rhythm, echoing against the hills like rolling thunder. Dust hung in the air, shimmering in sunlight. And then silence, the kind of silence that means someone unexpected just showed up. She walked toward the line, Private First Class Hannah Miller, her boots marking steady, precise steps across the scorched ground. Small frame, brown hair tied back, uniform clean but not new. Her eyes steady, unreadable. To most, she looked like another recruit trying too hard to stand straight. But to anyone watching closely, there was something practiced in the way she breathed, controlled, deliberate, like she'd done this 1,000 times before. The veterans didn't notice that. They only saw a small girl standing where giants normally proved themselves. Bet she can't even handle the recoil, one of them muttered, Staff Sergeant Reeves, loud enough for everyone to hear. His laugh spread through the group like wildfire, the kind that warms egos, not hearts. Around him, seasoned sharpshooters snickered, arms crossed, smug grins forming. To them, this was entertainment, a rookie about to embarrass herself in front of the best shooters in the division. Up on the podium, Master Sergeant Collins began his usual demonstration speech. 3 targets. Moving. At 800, 1200, and 1800 meters. Today, he said proudly, you'll witness what years of discipline can achieve. The veterans smirked at each other, confident they'd see another recruit fold under pressure. Hannah didn't flinch. She just stepped forward, adjusted the M2010 enhanced sniper rifle with silent precision, checked the wind flags, adjusted again. Every motion calm, mechanical like ritual. Reeves smirked from behind her. Hope you brought a miracle, kid. No reply, not even a glance. She took her position. The air shifted, the kind of stillness that comes before a storm. Her first shot cracked through the range like lightning, center mass, 800 meters. The echo hadn't even faded when she chambered the next round. Second shot, 1,200 meters. Perfect. Then the final target, almost invisible in the heat haze at 1,800 meters. Even Reeves leaned forward. Her finger brushed the trigger. A single exhale. Crack. Seconds later, the faint metallic clang of impact. Bullseye. The world stopped. The laughter, the arrogance. Everything froze except for the slow, steady rise of heat off the sand. Collins blinked at the monitor, disbelief crossing his face. 3 for 3, he said slowly. Perfect grouping. Even his voice trembled, not from excitement, but from something closer to awe. Reeves stared. His smirk had vanished, replaced by a frown that couldn't find words. Hannah rose, calm, professional, no celebration. She unloaded the rifle, cleaned her hands, and handed it back. The recoil's light, she said softly, when your aim is true, sir. And with that she walked away, leaving behind silence thick enough to choke on. No one followed. No one dared to speak. Only the wind moved, whispering across the range as the veterans exchanged uneasy glances. Later that night, in the dim light of the women's barracks, whispers filled the air. 3 perfect shots, not even the instructors do that. She didn't even flinch. She's hiding something. Private Jenkins, a curious soul with a nervous laugh, approached Hannah's bunk. She found her quietly writing in a small black notebook, the kind soldiers carry for checklists or prayers. Everyone talking about what happened today, Jenkins said, sitting nearby. Where'd you learn to shoot like that? Hannah didn't look up. Practice. That wasn't just practice, Jenkins pressed. Reeves says it was a fluke. Hannah finally looked up, eyes calm. Then I guess tomorrow will be interesting. Jenkins noticed something then, a photo half hidden under the notebook. A younger Hannah, different uniform, standing in what looked like a medal ceremony. Eyes distant, hard. The kind of stare soldiers get when they've seen something the rest of the world never will. The next morning the mess hall was loud, trays clattering, boots echoing, laughter bouncing off steel walls. But at one table it was quiet. Hannah ate alone, moving with mechanical calm. Sergeant First Class Garrett joined her, tray in hand, tone friendly but eyes sharp. "Mind if I sit?" She nodded slightly. He watched her for a moment before speaking again. "Your file says you transferred from administrative. That true?" "Yes, sir." "Before that?" "Nothing specific." "Where are you from?" "Miller." "Millerton, Pennsylvania, small town. Population 3,482, one stoplight." Garrett smiled faintly. "You memorized the census." "Helps to sound believable," she replied too quickly. His smile faded. "Where'd you learn to shoot like that?" "My father taught me," she said simply. "He believed in being prepared." "Prepared for what?" Before she could answer, Captain Monroe entered, calling across the room. "Sergeant Garrett, Miller, Colonel Wilson wants to see you." Colonel Wilson's office felt colder than the rest of the base. He stood behind his desk, a photograph in his hand. Hannah in a different uniform, same face, older eyes. "This was taken 3 years ago," he said, "in a location that doesn't exist. According to your record, you were never deployed, just pushing papers at Fort Benning." He stepped closer, "But this photo says otherwise." Hannah stayed silent. Wilson continued, "I made some calls. Nobody seems to know who you really are, but someone up high clearly wants me to stop asking." He leaned in, lowering his voice. "This base has a way of exposing secrets, Miller. Whatever yours is, it won't stay hidden for long." She didn't move, didn't blink. Only said, "Understood, sir." As she left the office, sunlight hit her face. And for the first time since arriving at Fort Rena, a shadow crossed it, something colder than fear. Not guilt. Not shame. Something deeper. Recognition. Like a hunter realizing she'd stepped into another hunter's trap. That afternoon, she was reassigned specialized training program under Garrett's supervision. The veterans waited for her again, Reeves at the center, smirk restored. "Miller," Garrett said, "welcome to the Tactical Response Unit. We train for situations that don't make the news." Reeves crossed his arms, "Or for recruits who get lucky." Garrett ignored him. "Today's evaluation, advanced range. Moving targets, shifting wind, adaptive lighting. Let's see what you can do." They handed her a new rifle, sleek, custom, deadly. MK-13 Mod 7, .300 Winchester Magnum. She examined it with reverence and familiarity. "Effective range, 1,400 meters," she murmured. Reeves laughed. "You can read the label, good for you." When the course began, the air seemed to hold its breath. Targets appeared, vanished, reappeared at random. Wind patterns shifted, light dimmed. Through it all, she didn't miss. Not once. Every shot precise, every movement pre-calculated. The digital display lit up in blue, 98.6% accuracy, 1.7-second acquisition speed. Garrett stared. "That can't be right." Reeves muttered, "The system's glitched." "Run it again," Garrett ordered. They did, different sequence, same results. From the observation booth, Colonel Wilson and Captain Monroe watched in silence. Monroe leaned closer. "Ever seen anything like that?" Wilson's voice was low. "Once, Kandahar, 2017, specialist from a unit that didn't officially exist." Monroe turned. "You think she's from?" "I think," Wilson said, "Private First Class Hannah Miller isn't who her file says she is." As the test ended, Hannah disassembled the rifle with calm precision. "Where'd you learn to shoot like that?" Garrett asked. She smiled faintly. "Would you believe me if I said natural talent?" Reeves scoffed. "No one's that natural. That's years of classified training." "Then I guess," she said quietly, "I learned fast." That night the base was quiet, too quiet. Jenkins found Hannah again, sketching diagrams in her notebook. "Someone calling for you at the command post," she said. "Said it's urgent." Hannah stood, composed her face, and walked into the cold, fluorescent light of the comms room. "Authentication. Delta Sierra 917, she said softly into the secure line. "Authentication confirmed," a voice replied. "Perimeter breach detected. Your cover may be compromised." Hannah's tone didn't change. "How?" "Unknown. Maintain position. Continue mission parameters. Eagle remains priority 1." "Understood. Support team is on standby." "Negative," she interrupted. "Timeline holds. Proceed as planned." She hung up, unaware of the figure in the shadows outside, listening. Reeves. Face tense. Eyes sharp. Whispers turning into suspicion. By dawn, the storm was coming. Why was he waiting for her before sunrise? Maybe because he already knew. Or maybe he just wanted to see if she'd lie to his face. The horizon hadn't yet burned open when Hannah reached the training grounds. The air was still, that fragile kind of calm before drills begin, when even the sand seems to be holding its breath. She moved with purpose, boots crunching softly on gravel. And there he was, Staff Sergeant Reeves, sitting on a bench, rifle parts laid out like surgical tools, cleaning cloth in hand. His jaw worked slow and deliberate. He didn't look at her, not yet. "I saw you last night," he said finally, still polishing the rifle's barrel. "At the command post, talking on a secure line." Hannah froze for half a heartbeat, then calm. "I don't know what you're talking about, Staff Sergeant." Reeves stood, setting the rifle down. Cut the act. Authentication codes, secure channels, that's not normal for a PFC." His voice hardened, laced with something personal, pride or anger. It was hard to tell. "You're not regular Army. Maybe CIA. Maybe one of those black projects no one talks about." She said nothing. He stepped closer, his height casting her in shadow. "Whatever you are, you don't belong here. This is my team, my base." Hannah's face stayed unreadable. "So here's what's gonna happen," he continued, lowering his voice. "You're gonna slip up today, make a mistake, prove you're not as perfect as you think. Then I'll make sure you're transferred out before sunset." Her eyes lifted, steady. "Or what?" He smirked. "Or I start making calls to military intelligence. I've got friends who can pull your real file." A pause. Then she said quietly, "I wouldn't recommend that approach, Staff Sergeant." His smirk faltered. "Is that a threat, Private?" She tilted her head slightly. "No, sir, just advice." Before the tension could break, a voice called out across the training field. "Hope you two are playing nice," Sergeant Garrett said, approaching with the rest of the tactical team. Reeves took a step back. The others didn't notice. They only saw two soldiers standing too still. "Today's exercise," Garrett announced, "is urban combat simulation, full complexity, targets, civilians, hostiles, variable lighting, work as a team." His eyes swept over them. "Hannah, you're with Reeves. He's Overwatch, your spotter." Reeves laughed once, low and humorless. "Perfect." The simulation zone stretched across several acres, a mock city of half-ruined buildings and steel scaffolding. Smoke from dummy grenades hung in the air, tinted orange by morning light. From the rooftop, Reeves set up his rifle while Hannah calibrated the rangefinder beside him. Through the scope, the mock battlefield looked real enough to kill someone. Cardboard civilians mixed with moving targets dressed like hostiles. Every shadow could be a test, Every decision a mark against your name. Just so we're clear, Reeves said, adjusting his scope. You follow my lead, you call what you see, nothing more. Understood, she replied. The buzzer sounded, the exercise began. Almost immediately, Hannah's tone changed, calm, analytical, fast. Hostile, second floor, moving east to west. 2 civilians near the stairwell. Copy. Shot impact clean. 3 o'clock, 2 rooftops over 1 hostile kneeling, wind shift 2 degrees west. Reeves hesitated, adjusted. Another perfect hit. But then she began calling faster, details even the system hadn't picked up yet. Her spatial awareness felt impossible. 2 civilians, ground floor north corner, 1 hostile approaching from rear stairwell. How the hell are you? Trust me. He fired again, hit confirmed. As minutes passed, her commands grew precise, instinctive, almost too confident. When wind changed, she called it before the digital sensors did. When light shifted, she adjusted timing down to fractions of seconds. It wasn't human intuition. It was training, advanced, specialized, surgical. Reeves started to bristle. She was making him look slow. When she told him, adjust 2 mils left, wind shift 3 to 5 o'clock. He snapped, I know how to read wind, Miller. He fired, missed. The red indicator blinked failure. If you'd adjusted, she said quietly, that would have been a hit. His jaw tightened, shut up and spot. Then it happened, a curveball. The simulation's AI introduced an unpredictable variable, a new hostile appearing behind one of the civilian dummies. No time for clean line of sight. Target 3rd floor, center window, partial profile, civilian in close proximity. I don't have a clean shot, Reeves muttered. You have 3 seconds before he fires. Not enough time. Take it through the east window reflection. What? 1 second. Before he could respond, Hannah moved. One motion, smooth, controlled. She pushed his shoulder aside, aligned the barrel at a precise angle and fired. The bullet hit a pane of glass on a nearby building. Changed course mid-flight. Hit the target dead center. Simulation froze. Targets deactivated. Silence. Reeves blinked, disbelief etched across his face. How the hell did you? Base command, Garrett's voice cut in through the comms. What just happened up there? Minutes later, they were all in the debriefing room, watching the replay in slow motion. The bullet's reflection path glowed in neon on the monitor, bending physics like suggestion. Monroe shook his head. I've seen Olympic shooters who couldn't make that shot. Garrett crossed his arms. That wasn't luck, that was math, calculating refraction, distance, and velocity in less than a second. Reeves just stared at the screen, eyes narrowed. Nobody gets that good just from practice. All eyes turned to Hannah. Permission to speak freely, she said. Granted, Monroe replied. The shot was nothing special, she began. Standard training for. She stopped. Too late. Everyone caught it. For what unit? Monroe pressed. Before she could answer, the door opened. Colonel Wilson entered, silent and heavy with authority. Captain Monroe, he said, a word. The officers stepped out. Through the glass, the team watched their silhouettes, tense, sharp. When Monroe returned, his face was stone. Training suspended for today. Everyone dismissed except Miller. Wilson's office again. The same photograph on his desk. The same silence stretched thin across the room. Close the door, he said. She did. He didn't turn from the window. I received a call today, he began slowly, from the Pentagon, General Marshal Hayden. He let the name hang. It meant something, it always did. Hannah's expression flickered, the smallest crack. Yes, sir. He's Deputy Director, Special Operations Command. Wilson turned, studied her like a puzzle missing its final piece. He is, and he apparently takes a personal interest in you. He slid a red-bordered file across the desk. This arrived an hour ago, classified at a level I don't even have clearance for. He paused. It says that PFC Hannah Miller is temporarily assigned to this base for specialized training assessment. He leaned closer. It also says your previous service record is restricted under presidential directive, and that I am to provide whatever resources you request. His tone hardened. What it doesn't say is why a soldier with your skill set is pretending to be a green recruit. Silence stretched between them. Only the hum of the air conditioner filled the space. Finally, she spoke. Sir, I'm not authorized to discuss my assignment. He nodded slowly. Then I'll say this. I've served this country for 30 years. I've seen ghost programs come and go. If there's a threat on my base, I need to know. There's no threat to anyone who isn't a threat to the United States, she said evenly. Something in her tone made him pause. He recognized conviction when he heard it, the kind that comes from scars you don't talk about. He nodded once. Well, according to this, your rank is reinstated. Sergeant Hannah Miller, effective immediately. He handed her a folder. She looked at it, eyes flicking to the reinstatement line. Thank you, sir. Don't thank me, he said softly. Just make sure my people don't get caught in whatever this is. By sunset, word had spread. When Hannah entered the Tactical Response Headquarters wearing her new stripes, conversation stopped cold. Even the hum of the air vents seemed to hold still. Reeves was the first to speak. You've got to be kidding me. Attention, Monroe barked. The room straightened instantly. As of 1600 hours, Sergeant Miller is special liaison to this unit by direct order of Colonel Wilson. Reeves glared. Liaison for what? Babysitting. Monroe ignored him, placing a map on the table. We've got a new mission profile. Details are classified until tomorrow's briefing, but prep begins now. Garrett asked quietly, what kind of operation? High-priority security evaluation, ahead of the Secretary of Defense's visit. All eyes shifted back to Hannah. Reeves couldn't help himself. And what assignment was that, Sergeant? She met his gaze calmly. That's not relevant to the mission. Reeves laughed under his breath. How convenient. That's enough, Staff Sergeant, Monroe snapped. Details are compartmentalized. You'll know what you need to know. As the team dispersed, Reeves lingered near her. His voice was low. I don't trust you. Hannah turned to face him fully. Your trust isn't required for the mission, she said quietly. Just your compliance. He leaned in. I've spent my career protecting this country. I won't let some mystery agent compromise that. She stepped closer, her tone suddenly sharp, a blade hidden in silk. And I've spent mine eliminating threats you'll never hear about. Stay in your lane, Staff Sergeant. For the first time, he looked at her differently. Not as an intruder, not as a rookie, but as something else. Something dangerous. When she walked away, he didn't stop her. That night, the base slept under a crescent moon. Inside her quarters, Hannah sat on her bunk, unwrapping the photo Jenkins had seen earlier. The same faces, the same desert sun. But now she focused on one, a man beside her smiling. Faded handwriting on the back read, Odessa, 2021. Her thumb brushed across his face, then folded the photo carefully, tucking it back into her book. Her eyes closed, and in the dark she whispered to no one. 3 years, one mission, still unfinished. The wind outside carried sand against the window, whispering like ghosts of the past. The kind that don't rest. Not until justice breathes again. Why did the desert feel too quiet that morning? Because sometimes silence means peace. And sometimes it means something about to break. The first light of dawn stretched across Fort Rena's northern perimeter, painting the concrete in cold amber. The tactical team stood assembled in full combat gear, boots lined in dust, helmets glinting faintly under the rising sun. Orders had come through late last night, another exercise supposedly. But Hannah could feel it in her bones. Something was off. Even Reeves, normally loud and cocky, was unusually tense, adjusting his scope without a word. Captain Monroe briefed them with his usual authority, pointing to the holographic map hovering between them. Simulation parameters, hostile infiltration during a high-level diplomatic visit. Red team will act as hostiles. Blue team us will neutralize. Garrett frowned. That seems close to next week's actual event. Monroe nodded. Exactly. The Secretary's visit is a week out. Colonel Wilson wants to test our readiness. Hannah stood slightly apart from the group, eyes fixed on the map, but her thoughts were elsewhere. The patterns didn't look random. The routes, the access points, the complexity, this wasn't a training simulation. It was preparation. Or worse, camouflage. She spoke quiet but certain. Who's leading the red team, sir? Major Stevens from Military Intelligence, Monroe replied. He's running the infiltration side. That was all she needed to hear. Her pulse tightened. Military intelligence never plays red team, not unless someone's testing more than the base. Sergeant Miller, Monroe called, pulling her attention back. You'll be command side with me. Reeves overwatch. Garrett, you'll coordinate the perimeter. Hannah nodded once. Reeves just smirked. Roger that, sir. Let's make sure our new sergeant can handle the big leagues. An hour later, the simulation began. The tactical operations room glowed with digital readouts. Screens tracked movements across the mock city grid. Everything looked routine, too routine. But as Hannah watched the live feeds, something strange caught her attention. A camera flickered, not a glitch, more like a cut. Feed interruption, Sector 7. Possible movement, Sector 7 near the old storage facility, she reported. Garrett's voice came through the comms, skeptical. Sensors show nothing. Check anyway, she said firmly. A pause. Copy that. Seconds later, another camera shifted slightly, almost imperceptibly, but not random. Reeves, she said, her voice tightening. Roofline building C12 thermal scan. He sighed. Miller, nothing showing on. Northwest corner, look again. He exhaled loudly, but obeyed. Moments later, his voice returned, lower now. Contact confirmed. That's not red team. Her hands froze above the console. Say again. 2 contacts, no IFF beacons. Movement patterns military foreign, not ours. Monroe leaned forward sharply. What the hell? Hannah was already moving. Captain, we've been compromised. This isn't an exercise. Monroe blinked. That's impossible. Then explain how they bypassed 3 secure checkpoints. He turned to the techs. Can you verify? The operator's fingers flew across the keyboard. Sir, 3 restricted feeds are down. Security nodes are being overridden manually. Hannah's voice was calm, but it carried the weight of command. Sir, we need to activate real-world lockdown procedures. Now. On whose authority? Monroe demanded, his voice caught between doubt and instinct. Hannah reached into her vest, pulling a small, matte black comms device unlike anything issued on base. She keyed a code in with muscle memory. Sierra Echo 419 Tango, she said quietly. Eagle compromised. Initiate Cobalt Protocol. The device crackled. A voice responded, deep, commanding, unmistakably powerful. This is General Hayden. Captain Monroe, Sergeant Miller, is now in command of your tactical unit by presidential authority. Follow her orders, effective immediately. Monroe stared, stunned. Yes, sir, he said, finally swallowing hard. Then turning back to Hannah, he added under his breath, "Who the hell are you?" She didn't answer. "Garrett," she said into the comms, "lock down all access to administrative sectors. Reeves, maintain overwatch. Do not engage without my order. These infiltrators are likely armed with live rounds." A low alarm pulsed through the facility, not the training tone, the real one. The team stiffened, realizing this was no longer pretend. "Pull up full schematics," she ordered, moving to the holographic table. "These are their probable entry points," she said, marking them with rapid precision. Her tone shifted, pure operator now, no hesitation, no doubt. Even Monroe, seasoned as he was, could feel the change. The quiet recruit from 2 weeks ago was gone. In her place stood something else, sharp, disciplined, and entirely too comfortable giving orders during a crisis. Minutes later, chaos struck. A security technician shouted from across the room, "They've breached the server room." "Move," Hannah commanded. "All units converge on the server facility. Secure the data nodes. These people are after intel." She grabbed her rifle from the wall and headed for the door. "Captain, stay here and coordinate response teams." Monroe hesitated, then nodded. "Understood." She sprinted down the hallways, her boots pounding concrete. The echoes felt familiar, a rhythm she hadn't heard since Odessa. Turning a corner, she stopped short. A man in black tactical gear stood at the far end. No insignia, no ID. They locked eyes. Recognition flashed across his face. "Well, if it isn't the famous Ghost," he said in accented English, smiling faintly. "They said you might be here." Her weapon was already up. "Who sent you?" He didn't answer, just bit down. Foam, convulsions. He hit the ground before she could move. She cursed under her breath. "We've got a hostile down, self-terminated, cyanide capsule." "Miller," Reeves' voice crackled through comms. "Two more hostiles on the roof, they just got a signal, moving fast." "Copy," she said. "All units alert. Hostiles are executing primary objective." The air was chaos now, alarms blaring, boots running, orders shouted. Through it all, Hannah's voice cut cleanly across the comms. Controlled, focused, unbreakable. She reached the server corridor, 2 soldiers already unconscious. A third lay groaning. Through the shattered glass of the control room, she could see data lines torn out and drives missing. Reeves' voice came again, steady but urgent. "I've got one target heading east, one west. What's your call?" "Hold your fire," she said. "We need them alive." "I've got clean shots, Sergeant." "I said hold, that's an order." He hesitated, then complied, though frustration simmered in his tone. Moments later, her team cornered 2 intruders near the auxiliary data wing. The firefight was brief, controlled. Hannah led with surgical precision, non-lethal where possible. Within minutes, 2 men were restrained, their equipment confiscated. Foreign design, custom tech, too advanced for any domestic group. When the last shots faded, Monroe's voice came through, low and awed. "I don't know how you saw it coming." "I didn't," she replied. "I just stopped assuming we were safe." Then she added quietly, almost to herself, "They're not here for drills, Captain. They're here for Eagle." Monroe frowned. "What the hell is Eagle?" Hannah didn't answer. Instead, she stared at the dead operative's patch, a barely visible insignia under his sleeve. A falcon clutching a blade. Her eyes darkened. "Vostov," she whispered. The name alone sent a chill through her. Years of memory pressed behind her eyes, gunfire in foreign dust, friends screaming over static, the smell of burning fuel. She pushed it down, steadying her breathing. "Captain," she said, regaining composure, "seal the base and get Colonel Wilson now." Hours later, the sun hung low, bleeding gold across the base. Inside the command center, Hannah stood at the map table with Wilson, Monroe, Garrett, and Reeves, all looking at her differently now. "These infiltrators," Wilson said. "You called them Vostok, you know them." "Yes, sir," Hannah replied. "Former Russian Spetsnaz turned paramilitary contractors. They sell to whoever pays enough to burn the world quietly." Wilson crossed his arms. "You've encountered them before." Hannah's gaze didn't waver. "In Odessa, they killed my team." Silence filled the room. Reeves looked at her, eyes narrowing not in suspicion now, but understanding. "So this is personal." "It's professional," she corrected, then softer, "but I don't forget." Monroe stepped closer to the table. "What do they want here?" They were after the upcoming demonstration, the one showcasing the Joint Strike Weapons System, Hannah said, pulling up classified schematics on the screen. "Those prototypes represent a leap in NATO defense tech. In the wrong hands, they'd compromise every Allied defense grid across Europe." Wilson exhaled slowly. "You think the Secretary's visit is a cover for an extraction attempt?" "I think it's a target," Hannah replied, "and we just stopped their first test run." Garrett muttered, "If that was just the test." "Then we'd better be ready for the real thing," Hannah finished. Outside, dusk painted the desert in fading orange, the color of wars waiting to start. Inside, one woman stood surrounded by soldiers who finally saw her for what she was. Not a recruit, not an imposter, but something else entirely. A soldier who'd already lived this nightmare once and refused to live it again. And though no one asked, the thought burned behind every pair of eyes in the room. If she's not here to train, then what's coming that needs someone like her to stop it? Why did betrayal always come from the people closest to you? Maybe because strangers can't hurt you that deeply. Only those who stand beside you can aim for the heart. The morning after the breach, Fort Rena was locked down tighter than a vault. No one in, no one out. Checkpoints doubled, drones swept the perimeter in lazy circles. But inside the base, it wasn't the enemy outside that worried Hannah, it was the silence within. She moved through the corridor toward the operations wing, eyes scanning every face. Soldiers saluted as she passed, their respect still tinged with curiosity. She wasn't just a mystery anymore, she was the mystery. In the briefing room, Captain Monroe and Colonel Wilson stood over a pile of confiscated tech, encrypted drives, strange circuits, and a small metal module unlike anything standard issue. Garrett stood by the door, bleary-eyed but alert. Reeves was leaning against the wall, arms crossed, expression unreadable. Wilson gestured to the device. "They had this on them. Our techs can't identify it. Doesn't match any known systems." Hannah studied it, the faint etching of a falcon symbol half scratched off. "Vostok Tech," she said. "Signal disruptor, high-frequency encryption scrambler, used for masking data exfiltration." Monroe frowned. "Meaning?" "Meaning," she said quietly, "they didn't just come to steal, they came to transmit." The words hit like a gunshot. Garrett blinked. "Transmit what? Our intel?" Hannah nodded slowly. "Or someone's feeding them from inside." Reeves straightened. "You're saying there's a mole on base?" "I'm saying the breach was too clean," she replied. "They knew exactly where to go, which corridors to avoid, and how long our systems lag between security resets. That's insider knowledge." Wilson looked grim. "We'll run full background checks. Everyone's under review." "Start with communications officers," Hannah said. "Anyone with network privileges during the simulation." Reeves raised an eyebrow. "Including me." Her eyes met his. "Including everyone." For a moment, no one spoke. Then Wilson broke the silence. "Fine, I'll authorize internal security sweeps, but Miller." "Sir." "Be careful where you point suspicion. Soldiers don't take kindly to being treated like suspects." She nodded. "Neither do traitors, sir." Hours later, the base hummed with unease. Rumors spread faster than gunfire, talk of spies, secret agencies, shadow missions. In the mess hall, laughter had vanished. Forks scraped metal trays in uneasy rhythm. Reeves found Hannah there, sitting alone as usual, eyes scanning data on her tablet. He hesitated, then sat opposite her. Word spreading, people are nervous. They should be, she replied. Fear keeps them alert. Fear also breaks trust, he said quietly. She didn't respond. He leaned forward. You think someone in our own team's working with Vostov? Her tone was flat. I think Vostov wouldn't waste time guessing. Someone gave them a map. Reeves watched her, brow furrowed. You talk like you've seen this before. She looked up slowly, eyes distant. I have. He waited, but she didn't elaborate. Still, something in her tone made his arrogance falter. The woman sitting across from him wasn't a prodigy, she was a survivor. He finally said, Look, I still don't know who you really are, but you saved our lives yesterday, so I'll help. Her gaze lifted, uncertain. Why the change of heart? He shrugged. I guess I'd rather fight beside someone who scares me than someone who sleeps through alarms. That drew the faintest hint of a smile from her, the first he'd ever seen. Careful, Reeves, that almost sounded like respect. He smirked, don't get used to it. By late afternoon, the internal investigation began. Garrett managed logistics. Monroe handled command coordination. And Hannah, she dug into system logs, cross-referencing timestamps and encrypted access attempts. Every keypress, every signal. Patterns emerged, faint, deliberate but unmistakable. Someone had been logging into secure directories during off hours. Every time the same sequence appeared, 03, 17 hours. Once a week. Always routed through an auxiliary server under the communications wing. She looked closer. Each trace was masked behind a generic admin ID, user 19. But she knew how to peel layers others missed. Within minutes, she found the embedded code, a misaligned checksum string. Old habit of lazy encryption. A signature. Her breath caught. The same one she'd seen in Odessa. She stood quickly, grabbed her radio. Command, this is Sergeant Miller. Lock down comms wing immediately. Restrict all access. Monroe's voice came through. Under what authority? Mine, she said sharply. We've got an active breach inside the base network. Within minutes, alarms flared red. Soldiers moved in controlled precision, clearing corridors, locking doors. Hannah moved fast, her footsteps echoing down the metal hallways toward the comms center. Reeves caught up behind her, breath steady. You found something. I found someone. When they reached the comms room, the lights were dim. A single figure sat at the main terminal, back turned, hands flying across the keyboard. Step away from the console, Hannah commanded. The figure froze, then slowly turned. It was Lieutenant Foster, communications officer, 34, clean record family man. She briefed him herself during her first week on base. Ma'am, he said, voice shaking, I can explain. Start explaining, Reeves growled, rifle raised. Foster lifted his hands. They came for my wife, she's overseas. They said if I didn't. Didn't what? Hannah demanded. He hesitated, tears in his eyes. Didn't give them intel. System diagnostics, patrol rotations, nothing critical, just schedules. Schedules are everything, she said sharply. That's how they knew our timing. He shook his head desperately. I didn't mean for anyone to get hurt. Hannah stepped closer, her voice lower now. Who contacted you? I don't know, always different numbers, same instructions. Encryption key. He blinked, I deleted it. She sighed quietly, no, you didn't. Her hands moved swiftly over the console. Within seconds, She pulled up a hidden file buried under generic metadata. A single name flashed on the screen: Eagle. Reeves leaned forward. That's what they were after. Hannah's jaw tightened. It's not what you think. Eagle isn't data, it's a person. Wilson and Monroe arrived seconds later, called by security. Wilson's voice was heavy. What's going on here? Hannah turned the monitor toward him. Lieutenant Foster's been feeding intel to Vostov. He claims coercion. Wilson's face hardened. You're under arrest, Lieutenant. 2 MPs moved in, securing him. Foster's voice broke as they led him away. Please don't let them hurt her, my wife. But Hannah was already turning back to the screen. Eagle, Wilson repeated. Explain. She hesitated, then. Eagle is a deep-cover asset embedded overseas. Female, operative in hiding. Vostov wants her extracted or dead. Monroe frowned. And you? I'm here to make sure neither happens. Wilson studied her carefully. You know this operative. Her voice softened. Better than anyone. He didn't ask how. He already saw the answer in her eyes. That night, the desert wind carried dust like whispers. Hannah sat alone on the shooting range, the moon casting pale light over the targets. Her rifle lay beside her, untouched. She wasn't here to train. She was here to think. Reeves found her there, silent for a while before speaking. So this Eagle, someone you knew? She nodded once. She was my spotter, Hannah said quietly. We were deployed together, covert operations. Vostov ambushed us during extraction. I thought she was killed. Reeves sat beside her, letting the silence stretch. Then, and now you think she's alive. I don't think, she said. I know. Her voice was calm, but her hands trembled slightly, not from fear, but from the weight of years spent believing a lie. I watched them drag her away. I swore I'd come back, but the mission went dark, files sealed. Everyone told me to move on. Reeves looked at her quietly. You didn't. No. The moonlight caught her face, softening the lines of exhaustion. I've spent every day trying to find her. Every assignment, every transfer, it all led here. Reeves leaned back, exhaling. You know, I used to think you were just some secret experiment, some ghost they dropped in to make us look bad. A faint smile ghosted across her lips. Maybe I am. He shook his head. No, you're something else. For the first time, the silence between them wasn't filled with hostility, just understanding. Shared fatigue, shared purpose. 2 soldiers who'd lost too much and kept going anyway. Reeves finally asked, so what now? Hannah looked toward the horizon. Now we find out who's still pulling the strings, and we stop them before they take someone else I care about. The wind stirred the dust again, whispering against the targets lined in silver moonlight. She picked up her rifle not to shoot, but to feel its weight. A reminder of control in a world built on chaos. She whispered almost to herself. Sometimes the enemy doesn't come through the gates. Sometimes they were inside the whole time. Reeves didn't answer. He didn't need to. For the first time, he understood her. And somewhere in the dark, far beyond the desert and the reach of Fort Rena, a woman with a scar across her temple opened a secure channel and whispered into the void. Tell them the Eagle is still alive. Why did the truth always come at night? Because daylight hides too many lies. And under darkness, even the bravest hearts tremble. The base was quiet again, too quiet. No alarms, no drills. Just the heavy hum of generators and the low murmur of soldiers pretending things were normal. But nothing was normal anymore. Hannah sat in Colonel Wilson's office, the glow of a single desk lamp catching the edge of the encrypted module they'd pulled from the Vostov agents. Her fingers tapped rhythmically against the surface, a habit born from years of waiting for clearance to move. Across from her, Wilson and Monroe stood, the weight of decisions written across their faces. "So," Monroe said, crossing his arms, "this eagle is not a project. She's a person, a missing operative." Hannah nodded. "Codename Eagle, real name," she paused. "Classified." Wilson raised a brow. "Classified even from us." She met his gaze. She was part of a Tier 6 task unit not listed in any standard registry. Ghost operations. Deep black. "And your connection to her?" "Partner," she said quietly, "and target of recovery." The silence in the room thickened. Wilson broke it. "So this isn't just an infiltration issue anymore. This is a manhunt." Hannah nodded once. "A rescue, before Vostov finds her first." Monroe stepped forward. "And you think they know where she is?" "They do," Hannah said. "This device, they weren't transmitting random data. They were sending coordinates." She turned the module toward the light. "Encrypted in fragments, each piece tied to the base's data systems. Foster's transmissions helped assemble part of it. I finished the rest." Wilson frowned. "And where do those coordinates lead?" She hesitated before answering. "Syria, northeastern quadrant, abandoned NATO logistics depot near the Euphrates corridor." Monroe exhaled slowly. "That's hostile territory." "It was," Hannah said. "Now it's ghost land, perfect for hiding prisoners no one's supposed to know exist." Wilson rubbed his temples. "If what you're saying is true, we're talking about an unauthorized recovery mission, across borders, no jurisdiction." "I don't need jurisdiction," she said quietly. "I just need a green light." He looked at her for a long moment. "You're asking me to sanction an illegal operation." "I'm asking you to save a soldier," she replied. Monroe stepped in. "You realize this could end careers, yours, mine, everyone's here." Hannah's voice didn't waver. "Some careers are worth ending, some debts never close." Wilson studied her, that steady composure masking something deeper. Finally, he said, "You'll have your answer in 12 hours." She saluted, turned, and walked out without another word. But as the door closed, Monroe muttered, "You really think she'll wait 12 hours?" Wilson's answer came slow. "No, I think she already knows she's going." The next morning, Hannah was gone. Reeves found out first, her bunk empty. Locker cleared except for her uniform patches and a single note, folded neatly. He opened it, 2 words. "Watch North Gate." Reeves ran. By the time he reached the perimeter road, the dust trail of a departing Humvee stretched into the horizon. "God damn it, Miller," he growled, snatching his radio. "Command, this is Staff Sergeant Reeves. Sergeant Miller's left base without authorization. North Road heading into civilian route." Static. Then Wilson's voice, "Stand down, Reeves." "Stand down, she's going AWOL." "No," Wilson said quietly, "she's going where we can't." Reeves froze. "You knew." "She didn't ask permission," Wilson said. "She gave us a choice, and I made mine." Hours later, deep in the desert, the wind howled like ghosts over the dunes. The Humvee moved like a silent shadow under pale sun. Hannah drove alone, no radio, no convoy, no backup. Her thoughts drifted between memory and mission. Flashes of Odessa. Gunfire, sand turning red. Her partner, Eagle, shouting her name before the blast. That voice still echoed through her nightmares. Now she followed it back into the fire. By nightfall, she reached the edge of an old NATO depot, now half swallowed by the desert. Broken fences leaned against empty watchtowers. The world here had forgotten itself. She parked behind a dune, camouflaged the vehicle, and scanned the horizon through her thermal scope. 2 heat signatures at the perimeter, guards. 3 more near the interior compound. And inside the main hangar. 1 faint human outline. Motionless. Her heart clenched. Could it be? She adjusted focus. The figure shifted slightly, small, slouched, but alive. Her whisper carried on the wind. Eagle. She keyed her wrist calm. Cobalt 9, this is Delta. Target acquired, beginning infiltration. But there was only static. She cursed softly. No signal, no backup, just her. Exactly how Vostok wanted it. She moved like smoke. Silent, precise. Every motion an echo of years spent in shadows. At the first gate she dropped prone, waited for the guard's packing rhythm. 3 steps left, pause, cigarette, turn. When his lighter flicked, her blade flashed once. He never saw her. The second guard didn't fare better. By the time she reached the hangar, her pulse was steady, her breath calm. She found a small ventilation hatch and slipped inside. The smell hit her first, oil, sweat, and something metallic. Blood, faint but old. Her flashlight beam cut through the dark, landing on a shape in the corner. A woman, bound to a chair. Head slumped forward, hair tangled, face bruised. Hannah froze, breath caught in her throat. She whispered, "No." Stepping closer, she lifted the woman's chin gently. It was her. Scar across the temple, eyes fluttering open weakly. Rena, Hannah breathed. The woman blinked, dazed. Hannah. Her voice cracked, disbelieving. You came. I told you I would. For a moment the world stopped. 2 soldiers, ghosts of a forgotten war, finding each other again in the middle of nowhere. Then Rena's eyes widened suddenly. Hannah, behind you. Hannah spun too late. A rifle butt slammed into her side. Pain exploded through her ribs. She hit the ground, vision blurring. Bootsteps. Voices. Laughter. Well, well, a man's voice said, cold and familiar. The infamous Miller. Hannah blinked through the blood. The man stepping from the shadows wore no insignia, but she knew that face. Vostok Commander Kirill Antonov. The ghost she'd been hunting for years. He smirked, "You've been looking for me." She gritted her teeth, "And now I've found you." He chuckled, packing slowly around her. "Still playing hero. You could have joined us, you know. We had a file on you, your record, your skills. You were wasted in their bureaucracy. I'd rather die standing with them than kneel with you." He smiled wider, brave, stupid but brave. Then he leaned closer. "Tell me, Hannah, how many of your friends died because of your silence?" Her jaw tightened, she didn't answer. He stood, gesturing toward Rena. "You should have let her go. She's been useful, gave us quite a bit of intelligence in exchange for staying alive." Rena shook her head weakly. "He's lying, Hannah." "I know," Hannah whispered. Antonov sighed theatrically. "Always the loyal one, but you'll talk, everyone does." He raised his weapon, pressing the muzzle against Rena's head. "Starting with her." And in that split second, everything inside Hannah broke open. The calm, the discipline, the years of restraint. Gone. She lunged. A blur of motion. Her hand shot out, grabbing the rifle barrel, twisting it sideways. Gunfire exploded, deafening in the enclosed hangar. Sparks lit the darkness. She drove her knee into his chest, slammed his wrist against the crate's edge until the rifle clattered away. He struck back fast, brutal, years of combat training meeting her own. Each movement precise, rehearsed by pain. He caught her arm, spun her against the wall, snarling, "You can't win, Miller." She headbutted him. Hard. "I already did." She grabbed his own knife from his vest, and in one swift motion, ended it. When the silence returned, she was trembling, breath ragged. Rena's voice was faint behind her. "Hannah, are you okay?" She turned, eyes softening. "I am now." She cut the ropes, lifting her carefully. "Come on, we're leaving." Rena looked at her with disbelief and relief, all tangled together. "They'll come after us." "I know." "Then why?" Because you're not dying here. They made it to the Humvee minutes before the compound alarm started screaming. As the vehicle tore across the desert, fire bloomed behind them, the depot burning, erasing everything that had happened there. Inside, Rena slumped against the seat, breathing unevenly. Hannah kept one hand on the wheel, the other steadying her. Neither spoke for a long time. Then Rena whispered, "You shouldn't have come." Hannah's voice broke just slightly. "You were the only promise I ever made that mattered." The desert wind roared outside, carrying the smell of smoke. And for the first time in years, Hannah allowed herself to feel something close to peace, even if she knew it wouldn't last. Because deep down she understood. This wasn't the end. It was the beginning of a war she could no longer hide from. Sometimes, saving one life means starting another fight. And sometimes, that fight is the only thing keeping you human. Why is it that victory always feels like loss when you finally get it? Because the battlefield doesn't end where the gunfire stops. It follows you into the debrief rooms, into your sleep, into the silence you can't escape. 3 days after the desert burned, the air at Fort Rena still smelled faintly of fuel and dust. Hannah stood outside the interrogation wing, her uniform stripped of insignia. No weapons, no rank, just a soldier again. Rena was somewhere down the hall under medical watch, guarded by MPs and doctors who didn't know what to call her yet. Asset, witness, or ghost. Inside the observation room, Colonel Wilson sat with Captain Monroe and two men in suits, government, not military. Their silence spoke louder than their words. Hannah entered quietly, her expression calm, but her eyes held exhaustion that went deeper than sleep deprivation. "Sergeant Miller," one of the men said, "or should I say Agent Miller?" She didn't answer. The man smiled without warmth. "Let's start simple. Why did you leave Fort Rena without authorization?" Hannah's tone was steady. "Because I had authorization, just not from you." He leaned forward. "You mean General Hayden?" "Yes." "Convenient, considering he's currently denying any knowledge of your mission." Monroe's jaw tightened. "Sir, with respect, Miller saved 2 American lives and neutralized an international threat." "Without orders," the man snapped. "Without clearance, without jurisdiction." Wilson raised a hand. "Enough," he looked at Hannah. "You knew what this would cost." "Yes, sir," she said softly. "Then why do it?" Her gaze drifted to the window, the reflection of herself staring back. "Because Rena would have done the same for me." The older agent exhaled through his nose, frustrated. "Do you have any idea what kind of diplomatic fallout this could cause? You violated international boundaries, engaged enemy combatants, and executed a foreign national." "I neutralized a war criminal," she corrected. "Without trial." "He wasn't there to stand trial. He was there to finish what he started." Wilson interjected before the man could reply. "That's enough, Agent Collins. This woman's earned more respect than that." Collins turned cold eyes toward him. "Respect doesn't erase protocol." Hannah spoke again, quieter this time. "Protocol didn't save my team in Odessa. It didn't stop Vostok from abducting her. Sometimes rules protect the wrong people." The room went still. Collins sat back, studying her like a file he couldn't quite close. "Fine," he said. "You'll remain on base under observation until further notice. Effective immediately, your clearance is suspended." Hannah nodded, understood. "And your friend?" "She's not my friend," Hannah said. "She's a soldier." He smiled faintly. "Then she's our soldier now." Hannah's expression hardened. "You can try to own what you don't understand, but you can't cage loyalty. Not forever." The man stood, gathering his files. "We'll see." When the door closed, silence filled the space again. Wilson leaned back, rubbing his temples. "You just made a lot of powerful people nervous, Miller." I've done worse, she said. He smiled weakly. That's what worries me. That night Hannah sat on the barracks rooftop, staring at the horizon. The desert stretched out like an ocean of ghosts. She held a metal flask in her hands, not for drinking, but because it had belonged to Rena. Her name was scratched on the bottom. Art Hale. Footsteps behind her, Reeves. He didn't say anything at first, just climbed up and sat beside her. For once there was no sarcasm, no edge, just quiet. You shouldn't be out here, he said finally. They've got you under watch. I know. He looked at her profile, outlined in the dull glow of the perimeter lights. You don't seem worried. She shook her head. Worry doesn't change anything. He watched her for a while, then quietly. I heard what happened in there. They're grounding you indefinitely. I figured. What are you gonna do? Wait. For what? She smiled faintly. For them to realize I'm not the threat they should be afraid of. He chuckled under his breath. You've got a hell of a way with words. She glanced at him. You came up here for a reason. What is it? He hesitated, then handed her a folded document. I pulled it from the archive before they locked you out. Satellite photos from the depot after the fire. Thought you'd want to see. She unfolded it slowly. The charred ruins of the compound. Bodies. But in the corner, a faint heat signature walking away, time-stamped 20 minutes after she left. Her pulse tightened. That's not possible. Reeves frowned. Who? She pointed. Antonov, the commander. I killed him. Reeves' eyes widened. Then who's that? Her fingers gripped the photo harder. I don't know, she whispered, but he's not done. 2 days later, she was summoned to the infirmary. Rena was awake. The room smelled of antiseptic and metal. Machines beeped softly, tracking fragile life. Rena lay pale, eyes open but distant. When she saw Hannah, she tried to sit up, pain etched across her face. You shouldn't have come, she whispered. Hannah smiled gently. You've told me that before. Rena reached for her hand. They won't let me go. I know. They think I'm a liability. You're a witness, Hannah said. That's different. Rena's laugh was brittle. Is it? For a moment they were silent, two soldiers staring at the same ceiling, listening to the hum of machines. Then Rena said softly, do you ever think it's not worth it? What? All of it, the rules, the secrets, the missions that no one ever knows happened. Hannah took a slow breath. Every day, but then I remember why we did it, who we did it for. And if it's never enough. She looked at her, then at least we tried. Rena smiled faintly. You always were the stubborn one. Before she could reply, the door opened. 2 agents entered. We're transferring her, one said flatly. Where? Hannah demanded. Classified. She stepped forward. You can't just. The second agent raised a hand. You're suspended, Sergeant. You're not in command here. Rena's fingers tightened around hers briefly, before the agents pulled her away. Don't let them bury me again, Rena whispered. And then she was gone. Hannah stood there, hands shaking. She wanted to scream, to fight, to tear down every classified wall between her and the truth. But she didn't. She just stood perfectly still, because that's what soldiers do when there's no order left to follow. That night she found Wilson alone in his office, reading reports under the dim lamp. You knew they'd take her, she said. He didn't deny it. It's above my pay grade, Hannah. They're claiming jurisdiction. They'll disappear her again. He sighed, maybe, but if she talks. She won't, Hannah said. She's loyal. Wilson looked at her, sympathy in his eyes. You can't save everyone. Her voice was soft. Maybe not, but I can try to save someone. He exhaled, leaning back. You're a good soldier, one of the best I've ever seen, but sometimes the system eats its own. Then it's my job to remind it who it works for. He studied her for a moment, then reached into his desk. When he spoke again, his voice was almost a whisper. There's a convoy leaving for D.C. tonight. Officially, it's transporting recovered tech. Unofficially, it's carrying her. Her heartbeat slowed. You're telling me this why? Because I'm old enough to know when orders are wrong, he said quietly, and because someone should be waiting at the last checkpoint. Their eyes met soldier to soldier, no rank, no protocol. Just understanding. Then Wilson said softly, "Don't get caught." By midnight, the desert road was empty, except for headlights cutting through dust. A military transport convoy rolled east, 3 trucks, 1 armored escort. A mile ahead, Hannah crouched behind the wreck of an old water tanker, night vision goggles glowing faint green. Every muscle coiled, every breath measured. She'd done this before too many times, but never for this reason. The convoy slowed as it approached a checkpoint barrier. Hannah moved. Quick, silent. She fired 2 flashbangs, controlled detonations of light and noise. Within seconds, chaos erupted. Drivers blinded, radios scrambled. She sprinted toward the last truck, the one marked as sensitive cargo. Rifle ready, she yanked the door open. Rena looked up from inside, restrained but awake. Her eyes widened. "I told you not to come." "I don't take orders well," Hannah said, cutting the restraints. "Where are we going?" Rena asked as Hannah helped her down. "Anywhere but here." Behind them, alarms blared, voices shouted. But they were already running, 2 shadows swallowed by the desert, leaving behind a convoy that would report interference unknown. They didn't stop until the horizon began to pale with dawn. Breathing hard, Hannah looked at Rena and laughed softly, half relief, half disbelief. "We're fugitives now." Rena smiled weakly. "Guess we're finally free." But Hannah's eyes darkened. "No," she said quietly, "freedom never free." The rising sun caught the edges of their faces, 2 soldiers running from a country that had already used them up. And somewhere far behind them, a line of government agents stared at empty desert prints and realized the ghosts they thought they'd buried were still out there. And they weren't done yet. Because some promises are stronger than duty. Some wars never end. And sometimes, the only way to keep your soul is to defy the flag you swore to serve. How far can you run from something that trained you to never run? Maybe that's the cruel part of loyalty. It teaches you to fight everyone except the people who betrayed you. 2 days after the convoy incident, the desert had given way to mountains, pale ridges of stone and silence. A stolen jeep wound through forgotten dirt roads, tires crunching gravel. Inside, Hannah drove with the steadiness of someone who couldn't afford fatigue. Rena sat beside her, half asleep, head resting against the window. The wind whipped through broken glass, carrying dust and the smell of fuel. Neither had spoken for an hour. There was nothing left to say that wouldn't taste like guilt. Finally, Rena broke the silence. "Do you think they'll come after us?" Hannah's eyes stayed on the road. "They already are." "Then why aren't we hiding?" "We are." Rena frowned. "This isn't hiding, Hannah, this is waiting." Hannah didn't answer. She slowed the jeep near a cliff edge, pulled off the road, and killed the engine. In the distance, the faint shimmer of an abandoned mining town, roofs half collapsed, antennas like broken ribs. "This'll do," she said quietly. They dragged the jeep under the cover of a rusted shed, covered it with tarp and sand. Inside the crumbling main building, Hannah unpacked what little gear they had: water, rations, and an old military transceiver she'd stolen from the convoy. Rena sat on the floor, stretching sore wrists. "You know they'll track that signal." "I'm counting on it," Hannah said. She twisted dials, listening for encrypted chatter. Static, then fragments of coded speech. "Channel's hot," she murmured. "NSA intercepts, they're still sweeping grid zones." Rena looked at her, incredulous. "You want them to find us?" "No, I want to know how they're looking." "Why?" "Because someone gave them a map." Rena hesitated. "You think there's another leak?" "There's always another leak," Hannah said, eyes narrowing. "The only question is whose side it's on." That night, the desert wind screamed through the hollow windows. They built a small fire hidden, controlled, the kind that gave no smoke. Rena watched the flames flicker across Hannah's face, drawing hard lines in soft light. "You haven't slept," Rena said. "Neither have you." "Mine's not by choice." Hannah smirked faintly. "You always were bad at downtime." "I learned from you." For a long time, they sat in silence, the kind only shared between people who'd survived too much together to fill it with words. Then Rena spoke again, voice quiet. "Do you remember Odessa, the safe house?" Hannah's eyes flicked up, every detail. "You promised me, if things ever went bad, you finish what we started." "I did," Hannah said softly. "No," Rena whispered. "Not yet. You don't even know what we started." Hannah's brows furrowed. "What do you mean?" Rena leaned closer, her face half lit by firelight. "They told us Eagle was about covert defense technology. They lied. It wasn't about protection. It was about prediction." "Prediction?" "Artificial combat intelligence," Rena said. "They built a system that could anticipate troop movements, insurgent patterns, even political unrest before it happened. It was supposed to save lives." "But—" Rena's voice cracked. "They started testing it on civilians, feeding it social data, private communications, targeting potential threats that hadn't even done anything yet." Hannah's stomach tightened. Preemptive elimination. Rena nodded. "Vostok wanted the tech, the government wanted plausible deniability, and we were the middlemen, until I found the data logs." She reached into her jacket and pulled a small chip, barely the size of a thumbnail. "This is what they wanted from me, the only copy left." Hannah stared at it, her voice barely a whisper. "You kept it all this time." "I couldn't destroy it. I thought maybe someone should know." The night seemed to grow heavier around them. The fire crackled softly. "You realize," Hannah said, "if they find out you still have this, they'll kill us both." Rena's eyes glistened. "Then at least they'll have to look me in the eye this time." Hannah turned the chip over in her hand, its metallic edge catching the faint light. "So small, and yet heavy enough to collapse governments. What's on it exactly?" Rena's voice trembled. "Names, programs, orders, and proof that the project wasn't shut down, it's still active." Hannah closed her fist around the chip. "Then we finish it, properly this time." By dawn, the first drones appeared on the horizon, small black dots gliding low, scanning with infrared. Hannah woke Rena with a gentle shake. "They found us." Rena blinked, startled. "Already?" "Too fast," Hannah muttered. "Someone's still feeding them our trail." She grabbed the transceiver, flipped open a secondary panel, and began jamming the signal. The static rose like a storm. Seconds later, one of the drones veered off course, spiraling into the rocks. "Nice shot," Rena muttered. "Not a shot," Hannah said. "A warning." But there were more. 3, then 5. They weren't searching anymore. They were locking in. "Time to move," Hannah said, shoving supplies into her pack. They sprinted toward the back exit, the world erupting in whirring echoes. Bullets tore through the walls as the first strike team descended. Desert sand exploded in clouds. Hannah dragged Rena behind a crumbled wall. 2 squads, north and west, she assessed quickly. "How do you know?" "I hear their calm cadence." Rena shook her head. "You're insane." Probably, Hannah said, loading her rifle. Cover me. They fought in silence, disciplined, surgical. Hannah moved like a phantom, every burst measured, every step calculated. Within minutes, 3 hostiles were down, another retreating. Then a familiar voice through the comms. Sergeant Miller, stand down. This is Staff Sergeant Reeves. Hannah froze. Reeves. His tone was calm, deliberate. Don't make me your enemy, Miller. Command wants both of you alive, for now. Rena's breath caught. It's a trap. Hannah hesitated, voice low. Maybe not. She switched to a private frequency. Reeves, talk to me. Why are you here? Orders, he replied. They sent me to bring you in before someone less patient does. You're tracking a classified operation. I'm trying to save your life. Silence stretched across the airwaves. Then she said quietly, you told me once you'd rather fight beside someone who scared you. I guess this is your chance. Don't do this, Hannah. But she already had. A flash grenade rolled from her hand, blinding the lead team. By the time Reeves reached the compound, both women were gone, footprints fading into the red dawn. That evening, they hid inside an old gas station, half buried by sand. Rena slumped against the counter, wincing from a graze on her arm. Hannah cleaned it in silence. You think he'll keep following? Rena asked. He has to, Hannah said softly. He's a soldier, he doesn't know how to stop. Sounds familiar. Hannah smiled faintly. Maybe. After a moment, Rena asked, do you trust him? I want to, Hannah admitted. He's not the kind who lies easy. Then why not let him help us? Because helping us means choosing a side, and everyone who does that ends up buried. The wind outside moaned through broken glass. The sun bled into the horizon, deep orange fading to violet. Hannah watched it like a clock counting down to something inevitable. You ever think about what comes after? Rena asked. After what? All this. No, Hannah said, I don't plan that far. Maybe you should. Hannah looked at her, eyes tired but steady. I plan for the next fight, the next breath. Anything beyond that feels like a lie. Rena smiled sadly. You used to talk about opening a range somewhere, teaching. Dreams change. Or maybe you stopped letting yourself have them. Hannah didn't respond. She just reached into her vest pocket and handed Rena the data chip. Keep it, she said. Rena frowned. Why? Because if I don't make it out, someone has to tell the truth. You're coming with me, Rena said firmly. Maybe, Hannah replied, but if I can't, promise me one thing. What? Don't let them rewrite what we did. Rena nodded, eyes glassy. I promise. Outside, engines echoed faintly across the dunes. Reeves' convoy, closer this time. Hannah stood, loading her weapon. Looks like we're out of time. Rena rose beside her. Then we make it count. They took positions by the shattered windows, the last rays of sunset turning the room blood red. The desert went still, the kind of stillness that comes before everything changes. Hannah's voice broke the silence. If this goes wrong, Rena, I'm glad I came back. Rena smiled softly. You always were too stubborn to die easy. The first headlights appeared on the horizon. Dust rose, engines roared. Hannah's hand tightened on her rifle. In her mind, she whispered one last thought. Not a prayer, not a plea, but a promise. You don't bury truth, you chase it. And then, as the night swallowed the last of the light, she stepped into the line of fire. What's the hardest part of coming home from war? It's realizing the battlefield never ends, it just changes shape. The wind screamed through the desert that night, carrying grit and ghosts. The headlights cut through the sandstorm like slow, white knives. 2 figures stood in the ruins of a gas station, Hannah and Rena, rifles ready, breath steady, hearts beating against inevitability. The convoy closed in. Through the static of her earpiece, Hannah heard Reeves' voice, soft but steady. "Don't make me do this, Miller." She keyed the mic. "You're late. Stand down. Command's given orders to bring you in alive if possible." She almost smiled. "If possible. You know how this goes." "Yeah," she whispered, "I do." The first spotlight swept across the ruins. Sand kicked up like smoke. She motioned Rena to stay low. "Flank east. If they breach the front, you move out the back. I'm not leaving you." Not up for debate. But Rena didn't move. She looked at Hannah, eyes fierce. "We started this together. We finish it together." Hannah met her gaze, and for a heartbeat, she saw not a soldier, not a survivor, but the woman she'd once promised to never leave behind. Then she nodded. "All right, together." The engines cut. Doors slammed. Boots hit sand. Reeves' voice boomed across the night. "Hannah, don't do this. They'll shoot to kill." Her reply came like a whisper caught in thunder. "They already did, just not loud enough for anyone to hear." A burst of gunfire tore through the wall. Shards of concrete rained down. The world became sound, gunshots, shouting, the sharp rhythm of survival. Hannah moved like instinct. Controlled, measured. No panic, no hesitation. Every round placed with precision, never wasted. Her mind wasn't in the fight. It was in the clarity that comes right before the end, when all the noise inside you finally stops. Through her scope, she saw him, Reeves, crouched behind a half-track, weapon raised but not aimed. He was shouting orders, trying to keep his men from advancing. Even from this distance, she could see the conflict tearing him apart. He could end this. But he didn't want to. Rena shouted from her side, "They're closing in." Hannah turned, returning fire, moving like a shadow between walls. A flash of light. A sound too close. Rena cried out. Hannah spun, saw her stumble, blood blooming dark across her side. She was still standing, barely but fatting. "Go," Rena yelled. "Not without you." Another explosion tore through the front. Sand and smoke swallowed them both. Hannah dragged Rena behind cover, pressing her hand over the wound. "Stay with me." Rena smiled weakly, always the hero. "Shut up, save your breath." "Can't," Rena whispered, voice trembling. "Too many things left to say." "Don't you dare." Rena's hand tightened on hers. "Promise me you'll finish it, expose them, make it mean something." Hannah's vision blurred. Tears she hadn't shed in years burned her throat. "Don't you do this to me again." Rena smiled faintly. "Guess I'm still better at disappearing." And then nothing. Just the wind. Just the sound of distant boots and a voice on the radio calling her name. She closed Rena's eyes gently. Then stood. No scream, no sob. Just the quiet steel of someone who'd already buried too many promises. She grabbed the data chip from Rena's pocket, slipped it into her vest, then stepped out into the open. The storm had calmed. Visibility returned. Soldiers stood in a half-circle, weapons drawn. Reeves at the front. He looked at her, at the dirt, the blood, the stillness around her, and his expression broke. "Where is she?" Hannah didn't answer. The silence was enough. He lowered his rifle slowly. Behind him, agents in black vests waited, hands tight on triggers. Hannah's voice was soft, almost gentle. "Tell them to stand down, Reeves." "They won't," he said. "They have orders." "So do I." She reached into her vest, and in one motion held the chip above her head. "This is what you're after, the proof, the whole damn truth." The agents tensed. "Put it down," one barked. She smiled faintly. "I can't do that." Reeves took a step forward. "Hannah, don't." But she was already moving. She slipped the chip into a small flare launcher, an improvised transmitter she'd built from the wrecked comm gear. Sometimes, she said, almost to herself, you can't save the system, you can only show it what it's become. She fired. The flare streaked upward, bright and burning, vanishing into the sky. Seconds later, the base's satellite relay caught the signal, automatic backup protocols activating. The files uploaded, scattering across multiple encrypted networks, impossible to erase. The truth was gone. Everywhere. Reeves shouted, "Hold your fire." But the agents panicked. One bullet cracked the silence. Then another. Hannah staggered. A sharp pain bloomed through her chest, deep, spreading, final. She fell to one knee, breathing shallowly. The sand felt cold under her hands. Reeves ran to her, ignoring the shouts. He caught her before she hit the ground. "Why?" he whispered, voice breaking. She looked up at him, blood staining her lips. "Because someone had to." He held her tighter. "You didn't have to die for it." Her voice was fatting. "No, just live for it." Her hand found his firm, deliberate. "Don't let them twist it. Don't let them make her a villain." "I won't." "Promise me." "I promise." She smiled faintly. "Good." The wind picked up again, soft, endless, carrying her last words away. Sometimes dignity doesn't speak, it simply acts. And then she was gone. Days later, the story broke. Not in headlines, not in news briefings, but in whispers across encrypted channels, leaked documents, names that shouldn't have existed. Project Eagle exposed. Operations suspended. Investigations launched. No one ever said her name publicly. But among soldiers, it spread like a legend. The sniper who defied the system. The ghost who burned the truth into the sky. Reeves sat alone in Colonel Wilson's office weeks later, the desert sun bleeding through the blinds. On the desk lay a sealed folder, Hannah's reinstatement file, never processed. Beside it, a metal recommendation that would never be approved. Wilson spoke quietly. "They'll call her a rogue, a traitor." Reeves shook his head. "No, they'll call her what they always call the ones who do what's right too soon." Wilson sighed. "What's that?" "Dangerous." He stood, pocketing a small, folded piece of paper, Hannah's note from before she left. 2 words. "Watch North Gate." He looked out the window to the horizon, where heat shimmered and sand whispered. Somewhere out there, he imagined, she was still watching. Months later, far from the desert, a small veteran shelter opened outside of Pennsylvania. No sign, no press. Just a modest building with a shooting range behind it and a plaque near the entrance. The words read, "For those who fought unseen. For those who never stopped." Inside, a woman taught recruits how to hold a rifle steady. Her left arm bore a faint scar. Her voice carried calm authority. When one of the students asked about the motto on the wall, she just smiled faintly and said, "It's from a soldier I once knew. She believed doing the right thing didn't need witnesses." The camera would linger on her face, Rena's face, eyes steady, resolute. And somewhere, as the wind rustled across the range, the faint echo of Hannah's voice would return. Soft, distant, carried on the breeze. "Aim true. Speak less. Do what needs to be done." The shot would fade to silence. Then darkness. Then one final line. White text against black screen. Sometimes dignity doesn't speak, it simply acts.